we're losing biodiversity, we're losing ancestral wealth. So every skin exported is a broad line extinguishing with no registry, no traceability, and no legacy. First, we have this code for African Union decision, and we know that this code carries the livelihood of people. It's the voice of the people, endorsed completely by our excellencies, the president of the country and this continent. This decision imposed continental moratorium on commercial donkey slaughter and skin export. The landmark for animal welfare and resilience. The current reality that we should look at is that enforcement remains inconsistent, like a lot of speakers mentioned. An illegal trade persists, and there's high-risk zones that we have at the border areas, the rural slaughter points, and unregulated markets. The continental impact is that Africa has 50% of the global donkey. Ongoing exploitation threatens their population, the livelihoods of our dependent communities, and also the community resilience and rural transport system, which undermines governance in Africa. This approach involves a whole lot, and I appreciate Brooke for this. You know, when you interface with people out here, you see that you find it difficult for them to even answer you or to give you answers when you question them, because the business, the so-called business, is clandestine. The business is hidden. And basically people don't want, essentially people don't want to give you information. And those that want to give you information will be very careful giving you information about donkeys. But here, can we go this slide, please? Let's keep going. Sorry, let's keep going. Okay, the next slide. Okay. The next slide, please. And then the next slide. Go to the next one. Okay, let's start here. So for Central, if you look at the Central Africa, the acts primarily as a transit region, and then Chad holds one of Africa's largest donkey population. It starts as an aggregation hub, because if you look at Chad, Chad have semi-feral donkeys. Chad have the kind of donkeys that people gather, and what they do is they round them up, starve them for 3 days without food and water, and then start walking them down to Africa, to Nigeria through Niger. The trade flows within the 1,350 kilometers of porous borders across this. Next slide. West Africa, which is the epicenter of the donkey skin trade, Nigeria, the nucleus of this trade. Major routes of the skin to Asia market, and the ECOWAS, will remember in 2016, had this resolution that enforcement would happen to be weak. Over 3,000 informal crossings, especially from Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Indonesia. Next slide. And you can see the next slide, please. So you can just see this, that most of these donkeys come from eastern Chad, from Biltin, they come to Masokori, and then down to boats, and then to the northern part of Cameroon. And then they're distributed. So the Lake Chad Basin happened to be like a buffer zone. Next slide. In East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania led the trade in 2014. The slaughter forces donkeys processed about 1,000 donkeys from across the region. Public protests led to abattoir shutdowns, and then IGAD supported the border by enforcement, but enforcement remains very difficult. In East Africa, you can see the movement. Next slide. For South Africa, only South Africa permits controlled legal trade, open borders, and enable illicit activity and attracting traffickers all over. Next slide. This Capri-Free happened to be, next slide please. Capri-Free happened to be a cross-border conservation tourism, and unfortunately is vulnerable to donkey skin and wildlife trade route in East Africa. Next slide. For North Africa, the trade occurs as an illegal transport and access to Mediterranean ports. Egypt operates a quota-based system, but bans are poorly enforced. So continue to serve as a trade exit point despite restrictions. But now, we go to the next slide. I just want you to click on it, on that same slide, so that we can just have a click of that. Can you click on this video? Can you click on the video? Next slide.
Previous slide, go back.
Go back. Go back. Go back, please. Go back. Okay, can you just click on that? I just want us to have a look at this. Is typical. The whole of this herd belongs to one person. And this happened every week in the northeastern part of my country. This whole donkeys came all the way from Chad. And it happens every week. Every week you have horses, these donkeys moving, a herd of donkeys. And to my surprise, these donkeys belong to one person. Because I met a dealer that buys 2,000 donkeys daily. Next slide. And if you look at the legal domestication, you can see here that we have the full ban, which is in blue, and also you have Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire for the temporary ban. You also have Kenya, Ghana, and then no ban. You have Zambia, and these whole places ended up becoming more like conduits for donkey skin trade in Africa. Next slide. I just want to ask you, go to the next slide. Okay, now let's just look at this. I see here lies the bottom line. Moratorium plus legal quota. A continental-wide moratorium on donkey skin trade is fundamentally incompatible with skinning that still authorizes legal quota. So you can't have a moratorium and then you have also a legal quota, because at the end of the day, you are going to have that to serve as a funnel for donkey skin trade all over Africa. And now let's look at this. Can we track what we cannot control? Can we track what we cannot control? If enforcement of moratorium remains a challenge, how can annual export quotas be effectively monitored? We need to ask ourselves this question. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide. Good. So the key obstacles to full enforcement of moratorium is legal gaps, where most countries lack donkey-specific codes, like the HS code. And most of the HS codes we have covered only cattle skin. So that means they can hide the skin under cattle skin and get it exported. So it's very difficult for you to track data of donkey skin internationally. We have inadequate border surveillance, we have insufficient deterrent, and evolving tactics of traffickers. Smugglers hide donkey skin in legal product to avoid detection and break down cargo into smaller units that are harder to detect. Mislabeling of donkey skin as a bovine product is common across the continent. Next slide. Enforcement gaps. As a donkey skin trade, you see that the HS code is very important, and we need policymakers have to take cognizance of that, because unless we have a specific HS code for donkeys, we're going to find it very difficult to fight this. The weak borders and gender costs. The next slide. The illicit trade tactics in donkey skin trade: concealment and deception, bribery and collusion. You see, if you look at these donkeys that just passed the herd of donkeys, they give, whenever they meet law enforcement agents, they pay per head for these donkeys before they allow them into these countries. Next slide. The impact of donkey skin trade. Next slide. One, we have the local extinction and genetic erosion. And this is one important thing that we should put at the back of our mind. That overharvesting removes breeding age females, shrink gene pools, and threaten long-distance resilience. Field data collected in Cameroon and Nigeria between March and December 2025 show that breeding age and often pregnant donkeys are being slaughtered indiscriminately. So at the end of the day, we end up with eroding of genetic diversity and extinguishing traceable pedigrees. Next slide. Now we have the population. If you look at the population in Ethiopia, everyone knows that it has the highest, and then if you come down to Nigeria, you have 1.3. But I want to tell you that every donkey slaughtered in Nigeria are always coming out of from Chad. So most of 99.5% of donkeys slaughtered in Nigeria are just coming from Chad. They are not from Nigeria. But if you look at the population here, you see just 1 point. So the population in Nigeria have stabilized. And that's an indication that most of these donkeys come from Chad. Next slide. And if you look at the African donkey, at the end of the day, if you conserve them and we do what we need to do, we are going to end up keeping this number. But if we don't, we're going to lose 40 million in trade just as a result of slaughter. The burden in Africa, pampered in China, one trade but two fates. I took that picture in China, in Shandong province, and I presented, and they never liked my presentation. But look at the two contrasts, one from China and the one waiting to be slaughtered. Every donkey you see there, none of the donkeys you see there are alive today. Here, take note, evidence that genetic erosion takes place. Look at this breed. I took this picture. It's not an internet picture. Sahelian donkey displaying are pronounced primitive markings. Note the dark stripes. Traits, diagnostics, Somali type, wild ass ancestry. This donkey is not alive today. Look at the unique traits. I took this picture in the northern part of my country, in the same market where you saw those herds. Unique traits in slaughter donkey, pink eye, muzzle with sparse pigment, a genetic rarity indicating a potential recessive to what conserving. These are genes that we can conserve. The donkey shows uniform gray to dawn coats. All these are donkeys that we've been killing, markers of indigenous West African breeds. Next slide. Slaughter of breeding grades and pregnant donkeys. What we are doing is that we're extinguishing traceable pedigrees. We're vanishing indigenous strains. Next slide. The real crisis beyond slaughter. The silent collapse of genetic diversity, that's what we're seeing. No biobanks for donkey DNA on the continent, no continental pedigree tracking, and the indigenous strains are vanishing. And I want to say this and repeat this again, that we are not killing animals, we are killing the future we didn't even document. And I want to repeat again, that we are not killing animals, we are not killing animals, but we are killing a future we didn't even document. Continental blind spot. Next slide. Continental blind spot. The key questions we are supposed to ask ourselves as delegates is that where are the donkey gene pools? Which lineages are extinct? Who is preserving donkey identity? Because without science-based preservation, we lose more than bodies. We lose stories, we lose resilience, and we lose history. Preaching knowledge and kindness. I say this in China when I presented, that donkey science must be guided by the consciousness of human kindness to create an environment free from donkey abuse and cruelty. Next slide. A second problem we have on the continent is organized crime and theft. The third one, go to the next slide, is collapse of rural livelihood. Everybody knows there are a lot of presentations, they have mentioned that, and they have the cross-border economy. But one good news that came out of Nigeria is simple, that the customs have been apprehended. The next slide, please, the next slide, next one. Customs have been apprehending this donkey skin, and they have helped in destabilizing this trade. I visited one of these places, the clandestine slaughter slab, and what they said was simple, that look, our business have gone down 6 months behind because we have been able, because the customs seized the skin. And that's to say, if you can have more enforcement, you're going to cripple this business. Now, the severe animal welfare violations, you can see in the next slide, you can see how dirty and how filthy this environment will look like. Next slide. And you can also see, you can see the protrusion, the rectal prolapse you see in these donkeys is as a result of being tied and then coddled, and they have a weak GIT system, and then they end up protruding. The GIT end up protruding. This is rectal prolapse type 4, and you can't even correct this. On a good day, as an equine practitioner, I can only euthanize this donkey. Let's go to the next slide. There's the brutal killing. We don't have time to look at this video. If you want, you can go to, we can always share this video with you. And these are the crises. The next slide, please. These are the, go to the next one. These are crises of donkey loading. And you can just see, but since you see what they did to that, so can we just go to the next slide, please? Let's go to the next slide. That's a little bit, and let's go to the next slide. data to preserve donkeys. We have enough information and proof to preserve donkeys. Next slide. Next slide. The success stories across the continent. No, go back. Go back. Go back. Okay, go down a little bit. Down. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, so the success story is this. In Nigeria, in 2015, in June, the custom intercepted 22 assaulted donkeys killed. In Kenya, you see the grassroots patrol. In Senegal, the national plan. In Togo, you have 2025 interministerial decree. And then in Gombe, one important thing I want in Gombe State in the northeastern part of my country, a traditional leader woke up and just told them, you can't do this, and it worked. He said, let the kids go back to school. Because he discovered that virtually all the kids were going back to the clandestine slaughter field, and they're refusing to go back to school and then to help their parents at home. But a traditional leader, without a decree, without any policy, changed the whole story. Next slide. The post-moratorium realities here is that we have the key margin issues, with the donkey herd still declining within the 40-60, and then we have weight penalties, we have health and ecological risks, implication for AU agenda, and then the next slide. The national legal enforcement, we have to criminalize this and then domesticate AU. IBABAN, we have enough data and we have enough proof to be able to domesticate this. And then also equitable access program and then alternative livelihood. Next slide. What Article 2 should declare? Reaffirm the AU urban moratorium, which is important, and call for domestication of legal policy alignment and also prioritize implementation action. Mobilize regional collaboration. Next slide. In closing, I say we are not just saving donkeys. We are defending rural dignity, we are reclaiming our biological heritage, and we are igniting the continental transformation. So I want to say to every delegate seated here that do not leave this with another declaration. Leave with a mandate for generational impact. Thank you so much.
Merci Dr Philippe pour cette présentation saisissante. Les images et les données parlent d'elles-mêmes, elles nous obligent, elles nous rappellent l'urgence. Il ne s'agissait pas seulement de chiffres, mais de réalités brutes du terrain. Thank you Dr Philippe for this powerful presentation. The images and data shared speak for themselves, they compel, they remind us the urgency. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about life and harsh realities on the ground. We now move on to another crucial dimension, global demand, particularly from Europe. Nous poursuivons maintenant avec une autre dimension essentielle du sujet, la demande mondiale et notamment européenne. Pour cette intervention, merci d'accueillir Viveke Placé. Oh, it's going to be on mic, sorry. I didn't get information.
To everyone at the panel. My name is Viveke Placé. I am the Communications Director at Welttierschutzgesellschaft, WTG. In your question, I think, what am I even doing here, speaking from Germany about donkeys in Africa? The answer is the long range of Ijao. Just shortly, in a nutshell, what is Ijao? I'm sure most of you know that it is a product used in the traditional Chinese medicine. It is promoted to improve the blood circulation, as anti-aging, and for higher fertility. So it is targeting women. But there is a lack of clear scientific evidence. The typical product which Ijao is being sold is this black jelly-like product that you can see on the picture here. It is cut into small blocks and sometimes together promoted with nuts or in a tea. But you can also find it as a powder, as granules or as food supplement. In Germany, sweatshoping. So the availability is very clear and we could get a variety of products. So many pharmacies are selling Ijao even without prescription by experts or doctors. We did this investigation with no official announcement that we are an animal welfare organization. Later on, when we asked for an official statement, we didn't get any answer. 6 of those Ijao products that we were getting out of 7 we purchased online and in the offline shops of pharmacies. And we were getting them easily in all varieties.
Elle, en même temps,
The online
elle a
shops
ses slides en
were
même temps.
sending the products
vidéo
to
que la
us
personne a
within
faite pour
a few days easily.
Moi, je pouvais jouer sans,
We
ça
then
n'a même pas fait de bruit.
checked the
J'allais
same
jouer direct.
on the
slide,
level of the European Union. So we were
Je comprends pas.
surfing
C'est un
on
fichier
online
vidéo.
shops such as Amazon, Alibaba, and eBay, and trying to find any kind of
plus.
Ijao product. Also here, the
Very good, ouais.
availability was easy and
Ça
the
pousse
variety
au
of
câble.
products was even better.
Il y a des
So the
pas très
products
longtemps,
came
pas de
either
mixer
directly
rouge.
from China
Tu connais le
to
programme
our house
35.
or also from China
Allez.
to those. The variety of products you can see on the pictures, we could see them as foodstuff. Very typical products are those red dates, so dry fruits covered in Ijao, food supplements such as powder and capsules and the pictures on the top, or within those pharmacies as granules or drops. Now let's get to the problem of the high availability within the European Union. Because there are clear regulations that show that it is illegal what we cook. The law and the regulations differentiate between Ijao as a foodstuff and as a medical product. As foodstuff, the example of those red dates covered in Ijao is very, very clear that it's forbidden to be imported, sold and distributed within the European Union. So all availability that we proved was totally illegal. It is similar about Ijao as a medicine product. It doesn't have a marketing authorization in the European Economic Area. So also the availability of granules and the powder was not within the legal supply chain. However, there are loopholes that allow the sale of Ijao, but only when pharmacies prescribe the Ijao as part of a recipe of traditional Chinese medicine. This didn't happen in our investigation. So we never had a prescription from a doctor and we never asked for a recipe that included Ijao. We always got the single product Ijao, as you can see. So with our investigation, we could prove that the Ijao availability and trade and consumption in Germany and the whole European Union is illegal, but happening. Why is this a problem? All of you know probably. We know those problems in those countries. As WTG, we are aware of the Ijao-related animal welfare problems since 2016 and until today. We see those animal welfare issues. There are the reports of the poor treatment of donkeys, the unregulated slaughter, the illegal trade because of the pests from the donkeys from the local communities. And we can see this in countries we are active, such as Tanzania and Kenya, but also globally, that this is a high risk for the donkey population. The number of donkeys globally is declining because of the high demand of the traditional Chinese medicine product, Ijao. With the higher demand and availability of Ijao also in European countries, the demand for donkeys is growing and growing. And since China cannot match the demand with its own stocks anymore, the shortage and the sourcing of donkeys will continue globally. The whole supply chain, that's the other part of the problem, is illegal and intrinsic. So what we could also see is that it is not clearly said what Ijao is on those products. So people that are getting either the prescription or the marketing of Ijao products are absolutely not aware that this is a donkey skin related topic and that this leads to a lot of suffering for donkeys. This comes to the urgent need of solutions, mainly on a political level. In the European Union, we do have laws, but the laws are not enforced. As you can see, the import controls are not happening. The online shops and the pharmacies can almost do what they want and no one is checking. Our investigation so the consumers and the people that demand ijao are aware of what they demand. Same happens on the level of the African Union, and here I'm speaking to all of you, that it is needed that we get a ban of donkey hide exports from member states of the African Union. This has to happen, first of all, on the country level, of course, but as well as cross-border. We can see that the trade is happening cross-border. So, for example, there are donkeys being sourced in Tanzania and illegally slaughtered in Kenya. So the law enforcement has to be rolled out on a cross-border level, and it has to be a good surveillance to trace and expose those networks that are still active at the moment. As WTG, we see our responsibility in this. Our vision is a world in which animals are being treated respectfully and there is no animal suffering. Focusing on donkey-related projects, we carried out work in Kenya and Tanzania, as well as in India, and we always try to promote animal welfare projects on a local level together with local organizations and including the people on site. We want to improve the situations of animals in the long term. Therefore, we do a lot of animal welfare education, such as trainings of communities, but also veterinarians and other stakeholders. In the ijao and donkey suffering related topics, we see our responsibility as a German NGO and as the voice of donkeys in Africa, in Germany. So we do a lot of campaigning, including political advocacy work in Germany and the European Union. So we appeal for better regulations and their control to protect the donkeys in countries like yours. We do investigations such as those that I just presented to you to prove the illegal availability of ijao, and also in Kenya to prove that the trade is still continuing. Therefore, we support local NGOs in Kenya also to protect the donkeys, to educate owners on the risks, and to watch and control the cross-border movement. In total, we want to increase the awareness and the opposition through public awareness. We're showing the hidden costs of ijao, the suffering of the donkeys, both in Germany as well as in Kenya, to minimize the demand and stop the suffering of donkeys for ijao. Let me get to the conclusion now. And I want to give it all a face, and this is a donkey I saw in March last year in the suburb of Nairobi, Kenya. He's responsible for the water sourcing of the whole community there. And he and his suffering proved that the suffering that comes with the high demand of ijao. So the decreasing number of donkeys bring a lot of suffering to the existing donkeys worldwide and in countries such as Kenya. This is a high risk not only to the donkeys but also to the whole community. So ijao's popularity also in the European Union puts this immense strain on the donkey's population worldwide and a lot of suffering on every single donkey that is still working. Another conclusion is that ijao connects Africa, China and Europe. I wanted to prove this in this presentation. And it is not only going to the disadvantage of the donkeys, but as said also to the communities and the whole society. The European Union plays a huge role in the global trade. And we are responsible to enforce higher standards and ethics. There is an urgent need of regulation, awareness and innovation. And us and WTG want to support this. It is very much urgent time to set an example, and we all have to take strong steps. I hope that my presentation could prove to you that we are on your side, and from Germany, the European Union, we are supporting your strong steps. And I'm very happy that you listened to this presentation, and I'm looking forward to get in touch to hear your questions or discussion. You can either scan the QR code to get the contact details, or you can write down my contact details here on the left side of the screen. And I'm wishing you a very successful conference, and thank you so much for helping to promote it.
Merci Madame Fless pour sa présentation. La vidéo a été diffusée. Nous avons rencontré quelques soucis de son qui ont malheureusement gêné la traduction en temps réel. Nous tenons à
As a
trade,
video?
especially on African women and children.
No.
Please welcome Dr. David Obiero.
Yes.
Merci d'accueillir le docteur David Obiero.
Yes.
Sur vos ovations, s'il vous plaît.
On n'a qu'à ouvrir le son là-bas. Ok.
Donkeys have a pivotal role in supporting the lives of women in countries to
Okay. Play. You play. Let's continue.
At the Donkey Sanctuary, improving the lives of donkeys is our top priority, and we can't do this without recognising the intrinsic links between donkeys and humans. Donkeys have a pivotal role in supporting the lives of women in countries throughout Africa, but in the last few decades, the global trade in donkey skins, driven by the production of the traditional Chinese medicine Jam, has led to a huge increase in donkey theft from many African countries. This has had a devastating impact on the donkeys themselves, the women who rely on them, and their communities as a whole. Last year, the Donkey Sanctuary commissioned the University of Masai Mara to conduct some insightful research into the specific impacts of donkey loss on women and communities in Kenya. And so, it's my pleasure to introduce lead researcher Dr. David Obiero to explain.
Je suis en fait.
Thank you, Laura, in absentia. Please, next slide. So, according to the FAO, livestock support the livelihoods, food, and nutritional security of almost 1.3 billion people. Donkeys can make a profound difference to women's economic security and are an important contributor to food and water security and poverty reduction. Women use donkeys to carry water and firewood and to plow and till the land. They are an essential form of transport and enable women to grow crops and later sell them at the markets. They are also critical to a one welfare approach, sustainably optimize the well-being of people and animals, as well as the environment that support them. Next slide. So, based on the trajectory in the last 3 decades, you can see that the dairy industry has grown substantially. In the last decade, with an estimated 5.9 billion donkey skins needed annually to meet demand. Consequently, the Chinese donkey population has declined significantly from 11 million to less than 1.5 million over the past 3 decades, a market 86% reduction. So, as in other parts of the world, donkeys in Kenya are tremendously useful to the communities that depend on them. They are an enabling core without which local livelihood systems cannot function. Their contribution, however, expands beyond mere utility. We had the opportunity to explore the impact of the skin trade in Kenya by gathering and analyzing empirical evidence. Our findings have been published in the Journal of Human Animal Interaction. So, we employed a mixed method approach, utilizing a descriptive cross-sectional study design, where we purposefully targeted women who own and work with donkeys in select urban and peri-urban settings across 5 counties impacted by the donkey skin trade in Kenya. So we essentially targeted Nakuru, Laikipia, Kitui, Narok, and Siaya counties, where eventually we ended up with a sample size of 171 female participants, to whom we administered standard questionnaires. And from that group, we selected a subset of 17, whereby we interviewed them through key informant interviews across September to October last year. So some of the findings were theft. One of the significant findings was theft. Up to 41% of the respondents had experienced donkey theft. And if you look at the infographics, the most impacted community was Laikipia, where 97% of the respondents had reported theft, followed by Narok County, which reported 63%, Siaya, 29%, Nakuru, 27%, Next slide. Another impact was, of course, the financial impact on their daily earnings. So women reported losing between 14% to 73% of their income following the theft of donkeys. So if you look at the county impacts, we found that the highest impacted county was Siaya, 73.4%, followed by Narok County, 50.7%, then Nakuru, 37.5%, and finally Laikipia with 14.4%. So in addition to that, we also had, other than financial impacts, women experience emotional trauma due to the close bond that they have with their donkeys. For these women, donkeys were like a close friend, an extension of the family, as exemplified by the names they are given. So in these communities, you find that the women, when they get married, they also get a donkey from the day one that of their new life. So they develop a very strong bond with this animal. They ended up giving them names so that they can easily handle them. As you can imagine, these are very powerful animals. In addition to that, we had impact on health and nutrition. Respondents often had to find alternative ways to complete the daily tasks of daily chores. So the donkeys that had previously performed tasks like carrying water and fire, they had to find alternatives for that. So both women and children and the entire family are affected, and consequently you can imagine poor nutrition could have long-term effects in the child development. Next slide. So consequently there was also the secondary impacts for the trade was the fact that they had to replace this stock, especially institutions whereby there is poor water infrastructure. So you find that the loss had a long-lasting impact. In some cases, women often reallocated resources that will have been used for long-term investments, so that could have secured their family's future. So reliant communities have to replace donkeys that are stolen, especially due to access to water. Finally, we find that the donkey skin trade has both short-term and long-term impacts on women, children, and the whole community. Next slide, please. So as a recommendation, we support the AU-IPA moratorium on the donkey slaughter for the skin trade by confirming bans and measures to end it for good. Also support the communities to prevent donkey theft through anti-theft initiatives or donkey protection initiatives, and the Pan-African strategy being led by AU-IPA. So keeping donkeys alive will enable them to continue supporting communities and contribute to global goals as envisioned by the SDGs. To summarize the donkey skin report, we would like to share a short video that summarizes this one.
Next.
The next one?
Oh, please,
Oh.
please wait.
Oh, I'm skipping.
Lakini uchumi vile unaona ni kama mzee, kama mimi ni kama mzee ananisaidia hizi bunda. Sasa akienda unaona nasikia uchumi sana, nashindwa nitafanya aje. Nasema siwapee watoto chakula juu sasa inaenda napata 300 daily basis ya kunisaidia. Hapo ni wazi juu siwezi pata chakula. chakula, watoto wafukuze shule. Sasa ilinibidi nikope loan ndio ninunue kule ingine ndio nirudishe kazi.
Wanatumia hiyo kimaisha, kama hiyo kazi ya maji, hiyo kazi ya dokta. Unajua kama anakuwa na vitu mingi kwa boma, na punda naye inasaidia sana, iliniumiza sana. Nimesikia kama tulitoka tukaangukia tena pesa nyingi, tukaenda mpaka hapo inaitwa Mokotio, tukaenda kujaribu kulipia hii serikali ya punda.
Sasa hiyo tu si una face tu boma yako na unazituka zikilala nje. Unajua sana sana zikilala nje ndio
Sasa sipeni nafasi, napea tu zikae na ng'ombe. Kama saa hii napea mchungaji wangu angalie yote na ng'ombe. Kama ni usiku napea zilale na ng'ombe, nahakikisha iko. Huwezi hata kulala bila kujua punda hakuna.
Faut voir un chef là.
Merci à tous nos intervenants pour ces présentations riches, précises et profondément humaines surtout. Nous allons maintenant ouvrir un temps d'échange de 15 minutes. J'invite nos trois autres intervenants à s'installer sur la scène pour cette session de questions-réponses animée par notre précédente session. Et si vous avez des questions, bien sûr, des réactions, des éclairages à partager, c'est le moment. Thank you to all our speakers for this informative, insightful, and deeply human presentations. We will now move into a 15 minutes Q&A session. I can invite the other speakers to take their seats on the stage for this discussion, which will be moderated by the session chair, which I believe is not there. So I will probably conduct this. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, share. Now is the time. Thank you.
Ils vont faire question-réponse.
Ça va décrocher.
Can we please have the other speakers? Doctor? Que la régie pourrait nous mettre à disposition des micros, un pour la salle et un pour nos speakers. And as for the questions that are dedicated to Ms. Plas, as you could see, there was a code that you could scan an email address, or you can even write down the questions and pass them through so that we bring them to her. Thank you. We will now start the Q&A. If you have some questions or insight for our speakers, now is the time. Please just raise your hand and we'll bring your mic. Let's start here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This opportunity. My name is Mandela. And my question is to Professor Ms. Shea. Listening to you and having read your report particularly, and the report this particular, I make an observation from And looking at the slide that was presented, what I noticed characteristically is that where there is big consumption of donkeys, it appears to be in some of the affluent counties within the country. And affluence recognizes demand for it. I remember your reports have pointed out the case of meat fraud, whereby people are sold meat from donkeys which is slaughtered illegally, but presented as if it was beef or it was meat from other animals. I'm curious to hear the commission. There's a study from Kenya. Will you take the study from Kenya to validate what you say that actually what we're seeing here is not a high demand for donkey meat in Kenya, but rather high incidence meat fraud? Merci. C'est Dr. Matas, groupe Afrique de l'Ouest. Vous voulez donc la présentation Allô? Je disais que je voulais revenir sur un point concernant la présentation de comme vous l'avez dit si bien, il y a un épicentre du commerce au niveau du Nigeria. Mais en fait, dans la sous-région, je pense qu'il y en a deux. Le Nigeria, comme vous l'avez dit, mais le Ghana aussi. On a deux corridors. Donc, les gens qui viennent du Tchad au Nigeria, mais tous les autres pays de la région sahélienne, les gens sont acheminés vers le Ghana via le marché de Kilondo qui se trouve au Burkina Faso et à la frontière de Burkina Faso et le Ghana. Et chaque année, des milliers d'ânes sont convoyés là-bas pour être sacrifiés au niveau du Ghana et puis exportés. Donc c'est donc il faut vouloir, à mon avis, qu'il provient de considération à juste valeur si nous voulons adresser le problème de nos communautés.
For the next speakers, please hold the top of the mic just in front of your mouth so that we can listen to you clearly.
Moi, c'est Dr. Zappé de l'Association pour la protection et le bien-être animal, APROBA, Burkina Faso. J'ai tout juste un commentaire. Après avoir suivi les différentes présentations, je pense que les actions que nous devons mener au niveau communautaire pour le bien-être animal chez l'âne et pour la préservation de cette espèce-là, c'est surtout mettre l'accent au niveau des jeunes, c'est-à-dire des enfants, parce que ce sont les enfants qui conduisent l'âne, qui le maltraitent, qui l'utilisent pour transporter les différentes charges au niveau rural. Donc ceux qui ont fait le niveau rural comprennent ce que je veux dire. Et à côté des enfants, et surtout les femmes aussi, qui utilisent beaucoup l'âne. Dans l'utilisation de l'âne, elles utilisent l'âne pour le transport de différentes charges et pour les travaux champêtres. Et tout ça s'est ressorti dans les différentes présentations. Donc pour nous, il faudrait peut-être mettre l'accent au niveau communautaire sur les actions sur la sensibilisation des jeunes, c'est-à-dire à travers les écoles, les espaces de loisirs, là où ils se retrouvent, et aussi les femmes. Je pense que si ensemble nous faisons ce travail au niveau communautaire, ça va réduire considérablement les maltraitances que l'âne peut subir. jours à venir à limiter et l'abattage systématique des ânes, puisque ce sont des enfants d'aujourd'hui qui deviennent des adultes de demain. C'est ce que je voulais faire comme commentaire d'abord.
Here I am, please. Excuse me, here I am. Here I am, Josie. Thank you very much. I just want to add something small to the challenges that we face with our donkeys. I'm personally a donkey farmer or owner. Donkeys are very poor breeders. So if we are going to get anywhere with the populations, then apart from protecting what we have, then we need to put a lot of emphasis on the donkey breeding programs. A female donkey, even if you kept it with 10 male donkeys, can take up to 6 years before getting a young one. Another thing I wanted to say is that if we are going to influence policy in relation to inclusion of donkeys in national agricultural investment plans and other national policies, then we may need to prove the contribution of donkeys into the gross domestic products of other countries. Because what is our policy, what is our bargaining power, how are we influencing policy? Policy makers believe in figures and they believe in money, the dollar. So if you show them how much the donkey is contributing to the GDP, then they are going to listen to you in terms of including donkey issues in national agricultural investment plans. Finally, I want to talk about the way we look at protection of the donkey. We may need to emphasize more on a regional approach to protecting the donkeys. So if we have one country that is enforcing protection more than a neighboring country that really enforcement is literally not there, then we are not doing a lot. Because the donkeys are going to be smuggled from the country that is strict to the country that is not serious. So if we can harmonize neighboring countries, the approaches, we may not harmonize the policies, it may not be possible, but we may harmonize approaches and compliance, the level of compliance, so that neighboring countries achieve more or less a similar level of compliance. So that someone mentioned that donkeys are being smuggled from Tanzania to Kenya. But if the level of compliance between Tanzania and Kenya was the same, then nobody will smuggle donkeys from one country to another one. So maybe we need to give the protection of donkeys more or less a cross-border or a regional approach. Thank you.
Last one question, and we move.
Yes, just one last question.
Because we are running away. So
the lady at the table there was asking for the please. At this table.
answer this. So, but if donkey, there's a rise in food fraud across Africa because you have these donkeys being slaughtered, and once you have donkeys slaughtered, you know the skin will be sold. That means they're not going to dispose the skin. And because donkeys are cheap, you see a whole lot of people going for donkey meat. And because the donkey meat is available, they want to find buyers. And if they want buyers, if they wouldn't find buyers, the best way to make this donkey meat disappear is to sell them as beef. And one typical example, if you look at my country, is that we have a lot of clandestine donkey slaughter slabs and slaughter fields. And they slaughter a lot of donkey just within the local government where my university is. They apprehended more than 3 people selling donkey meat as beef. So the more you have this donkey meat available, the more people will want to send them out as beef. And for example, this picture, the video you saw, this is a place, it's ongoing. This is a place that takes more than 5,000 donkeys weekly. And the 5,000 donkeys weekly disappear into Nigerian market, into the clandestine slaughter slabs and fields. And you know, if you compare what you slaughter and what leaves the market, you wouldn't find some of these donkeys. Where do they go to? They actually go to the meat goes to the normal market where donkeys are, cattle meat is sold or beef is sold. So I think if you go to Cameroon, there are legal places where people slaughter and people come to buy it as donkey meat. In southern part of Nigeria, there are places where people buy donkeys, donkey meat. But if you come to the north, people don't eat donkeys in the north. So virtually what they do, if they slaughter in the northern part of this country, what they do is that they sell it as beef. So as far as this is concerned, you know that it's cheap. You know that the whole of our capital, Abuja, there was a time the butchers complained that a lot of donkey meat is infiltrating the market and they are worried about it. But because these people are syndicates, they have syndicates and they're very powerful, so they end up silencing these butchers. So for me, I think it's very important for us to take note that as far as donkeys are available, but I just want to ask this question, just to take us back. If you have a commodity that is not sustainable, whatever you do, is it a business? Any business without a sustainable commodity is not a business. I stand to be corrected. So if you have a scheme that is not sustainable and then you're selling it, you keep killing these donkeys because of the scheme, then you're not doing a business. So for me, I feel that the donkey scheme is not sustainable, the business is not sustainable, and as far as you slaughter donkeys, they must find a way of selling this donkey skin. Like if the one I tracked in Cameroon, they gather the skin and they make sure that it's 50 in number before they move it to Nigeria. And they gather it, they keep gathering, and then when they have up to 50, then they ship it to Nigeria. They take it in trucks to Nigeria. So these are just some of the ways that these people move this skin. And to answer the question from Dr. Makta, he mentioned this, the corridor. You see, if you look at, there's nowhere in Africa, I stand to be corrected, where you have 5,000 donkeys sold weekly. I don't think there's a market. So this is a major market that we should lay emphasis on. And if you go to Chad have semi-feral donkeys. In other words, they have donkeys that are freely roaming around, but are not really feral donkeys, but they are domesticated donkeys that were released to give birth, and they just keep producing. And so what they do, I just want to make this as a point of emphasis. What they do is simple. They round up these donkeys, starve them for water and feed for 3 days. Once they get weak, then they start moving them to Nigeria. So they go through Chad, they release some in Ghana, and then they move to Lake Chad, and then they come down, to Nigeria. So what they do is that they round them up, starve them for 3 days, no water, so that they can be tractable, so that they can be controlled. So for me, I think this is important for us to note that we need to have to understand the strategic areas where these animals move. If, for example, you can track and work with the Chadian government to stop You know, we don't need a lot of data. I don't think we don't have enough data. What we've seen is more than a data. There are some videos and pictures that are more than data. And they have appealed to us, and we should be able to understand that this is a serious problem. And we have to track it from the root. And regarding the last question that she mentioned about the breeding, you see, you don't start breeding, we don't really breed donkeys because we want to increase their number. We breed donkeys because we want to protect pedigrees that we're losing to slaughter. And I want to repeat again that we don't breed donkeys because we want to increase their number only, but we breed because we want to protect pedigrees that we are losing to donkey slaughter and abuse. So that is very important. So if we want to protect our donkeys, we shouldn't just start thinking about breeding first. We should go to the feral donkeys and declare those places protected zone. When you protect the feral donkeys and where they get all these other donkeys, then you're going to cut the numbers. Then we can go back to the city, we can go back to the villages and our communities and start talking about breeding. But there's no breeding program that will increase the number of donkeys. But you can have a breeding program that will be able to protect pedigrees that we're losing. Because you can have a whole number of donkeys in this continent, but you might have donkeys due to inbreeding, and at the end of the day, those donkeys will just be genetic junks that have nothing to do, they have lost their resilience. But if you breed strategically so that you can protect pedigrees, then you're going to have better donkeys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Among the other remarks that have been made, that among the tools that you use to advocate, donkeys' contribution to natural gross domestic product, the GDP, should be demonstrated. That you have not used that in your presentation.
You see, like I said, we have to be true to ourselves as policymakers and as stakeholders. That I don't think we don't have enough data to convince our policymakers. I think Brooke and other animal charities have done a lot of fantastic work regarding these figures. And I know the government want to know figures, they want to see money, but there's a lot of things that we do, that our government do, that they don't actually look at money. So why not also look at donkeys that way and understand that the ripple effect that these things have on the communities, the ripple effect that this have on the livelihood of people, that we have to understand that even when a village or so, or a family gets poor, it has a lot of impact on their health mentally. We have to look at that. And if you have a community that has a lot of problem with stress, you know what that means. So I think we have enough data to be able to use and to say no to donkey slaughter on this continent. And you have to understand that this reflects on the character of our continent. That if you can allow donkeys to be slaughtered and be killed, like I showed on the video, I mean, it's to question the integrity of our continent. And far beyond that, we just have to understand that when you allow this, like I quote, that if you give way over little things, you might have to give way over bigger ones. In other words, if we don't protect these resources, we might end up losing other resources in the future. Thank you.
You made mention that there is no, is it HS code? Is it? HS code for
okay,
donkey skin?
thank you so much for that. I think, you see, if you look at the data, if they tell you equine skin, equine, it covers both zebra, it covers horses, mules, and what. So, but now that we're having problem with donkey skin, now that people hide it under some HS code, and you find it very difficult to track, I think it's not, it's the duty of the customs to look at this and say, okay, if we need a specific HS code for just donkeys so that we can track them in international data, so be it. It's important for us to do that,
So you have
if
the
you
next
must do it.
presentation.
But if you say equine, they can wake up and tell you that this is a horse skin, and it's still equine, and you have to allow it go. So let's have a specific HS code for donkey, so you know that if you're taking donkey, we can track it around, and we can go to the shipping industries and tell them, don't allow this go, because these are for donkeys. don't allow this go because, but if you leave it on the e-point, they might tell you that this is a zebra skin, this is a horse skin, this is a mule skin. So that is it. But for me, it's about policy. It's about customs understanding what they have and how to be able to track some of this donkey skin. Thank you.
I will now, if you allow me, direct question to Dr. Viro. You've shown us the social consequences of this trade on women and children. In your opinion, what concrete steps can African governments take to better protect this vulnerable population?
So for our case, there's a lot of awareness that through policy, through efforts to include donkey in the national livestock policy, that are very useful in terms of getting information to the government, because it's the government that makes that propagates the policies themselves. So in terms of what they can do at a very local level, within the laws we have penal codes, and even as the law it is by itself, there are tools that the government can use, even starting with just identifying the cases of cruelty. We have the CAP 360 as it is. There are no loopholes in terms of how to treat issues to do with donkey theft and animal cruelty. So what we realize is that the level of awareness, like another speaker mentioned earlier here, is that cases of cruelty or animal welfare when it comes to donkeys, there's very poor awareness when it comes to the legal system. They don't perceive poor donkey welfare as a crime. But if you refer to our penal codes and the laws as they are, cruelty and animal welfare issues are very clearly defined, and they are things that are litigatable. So what we also know, and we can give credit to the local and the international NGOs operating within the country, is that there's a lot of awareness initiatives, even to the police, to be able to identify and even clearly define charge sheets, so that these issues can be, these people that break this, commit these incidents can be taken to court and actually action be taken.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous vous remercions pour vos contributions, mais nous sommes désolés, nous avons pris un peu de retard dans le programme. Afin de respecter le temps qui nous est imparti, nous allons devoir avancer vers la suite de la session. Merci de votre compréhension. Tous les acteurs sont présents. Prenez la peine de les rencontrer après la session pour essayer d'avoir la réponse à vos questions. Thank you all for your contributions. We apologize, we are running slightly behind schedule. In order to stay on track, we will now move ahead with the next part of the session. Thank you for your understanding, and please make sure you talk to the speakers after the session so that you can get answers to your questions. Thank you. Et nous poursuivons donc avec un moment important de cette session, la présentation de la stratégie panafricaine du plan d'action pour la préservation des animaux en Afrique, une feuille de route ambitieuse, structurée et portée par l'Union africaine qui vise à répondre de façon concrète aux enjeux que nous avons évoqués jusqu'ici. Cette présentation est assurée par le Dr Camille Laure Ngouekeng de l'Union africaine, Bureau interafricain des ressources animales. Dr Ngouekeng, vous avez la parole.
il a été dit tantôt, les ânes sont des animaux qui interviennent dans plusieurs aspects de la vie quotidienne. Ils sont des êtres qui travaillent dans aspects socio-économiques, agricoles, les moyens de subsistance et dans le développement durable. Pour ce faire, un instant s'il vous plaît. Non, ça va aller, merci, ça va aller. Ok. Oui, bon, en Afrique, prochaine, où il y a l'abattage, non, c'est avant. Abattage, oui, justement, c'est là. Merci. Donc, en Afrique, il est constaté que les ânes sont abattus légalement et illégalement, ce qui entraîne des souffrances pour la subsistance et intervient aussi au niveau des chaînes de valeur des ânes. Et la population. C'est pas la suivante, s'il vous plaît. Oui. Oui. Et on constate que la durée de la gestation chez les ânes est très longue, ce qui fait en sorte qu'il y a un impact sur la population asine. Et en plus, il y a des données qui sont manquantes, absence des données pour informer les politiques sur la législation et les programmes basés sur des preuves et donc inadéquates et les programmes, des non prises en compte de ces animaux dans les lois et législation en matière d'élevage. Bon, là c'est le map road qui montre les différentes étapes qui ont été présentées par les autres collaborateurs qui ont présenté. Donc il y a des interventions qui sont faites par les États membres, et puis c'est des ONG, des organisations non gouvernementales qui ont travaillé aussi sur la conférence des ânes. Et avec le PADCO, Pan-African Donkey Conference, qui s'est passé au niveau de la déclaration prise à Dar es Salaam, qui a continué ensuite par l'endossement au niveau de report de PADCO. Au niveau. Oui, bon. Passer à la prochaine. Et il y a eu une décision du Conseil exécutif avec le groupe technique de travail qui a été fait au Burkina avec l'Union africaine et les autres partenaires sur la déclaration pour le moratoire sur le commerce de la peau d'âne. Donc selon la FAO, prochaine. Please, next slide. Next. Oui, la FAO estime en 2022 52 millions d'ânes pour l'effectif mondial, dont les deux tiers appartiennent à l'Afrique. L'Afrique détient les deux tiers. Et ces animaux interviennent pour le transport, la traction, les ménages, mais ils interviennent, je tiens à rappeler qu'ils interviennent aussi en médecine, en pédiatrie, en gériatrie, et ce sont des animaux qui jouent un rôle de tondeuse biologique, pour ne citer que cela. Et cette espèce est menacée par le commerce de la peau d'âne, le bien-être aussi insuffisant, les politiques de trafic transfrontalier dont les frontières sont poreuses. ce qui fait qu'il y a un trafic non contrôlé des ânes et qui menace cette population. Pour ce qui est des principes directeurs, il y a la subsidiarité, la complémentarité, la coopération, la transparence et la responsabilité mutuelle. Les ânes en tant qu'êtres sensibles avec une valeur intrinsèque. Et puis il y a des chaînes de valeur durables et respectueuses du bien-être et de recherche sur l'élevage. La vision de la stratégie passe par la reconnaissance des ânes comme êtres sensibles et prospères pour le développement socio-économique, dont la mission est d'augmenter l'engagement, la collaboration, l'investissement, la capacité de protéger le bien-être de ces animaux. L'objectif est cadre pour les États membres pour la préservation des ânes en bonne santé et les moyens de subsistance des communautés dépendantes des dits animaux. Ainsi, pour atteindre cet objectif global, il y a des objectifs stratégiques, dont le premier objectif est d'améliorer la santé et le bien-être des ânes. Le second, augmenter l'investissement dans la production et l'élevage durable des ânes, la productivité, la préservation génétique, le programme de développement de la chaîne de valeur. Et la troisième stratégie, développer et harmoniser les politiques, la législation et stratégie globale pour la préservation des ânes par les États membres. Stratégie numéro 4, entreprendre et diffuser des recherches pertinentes sur les ânes à travers des cartographies, moteurs de commerce de la peau et des données collectées sur les populations asines et le bien-être, soutenir des études sur l'alimentation et la génétique. La stratégie numéro 5, communication, gestion des connaissances, le reporting et la sensibilisation permanente. La stratégie numéro 6, renforcer la collaboration, la mobilisation des ressources et la coordination pour la mise en œuvre de la dite stratégie. Pour ce qui est de la mise en œuvre, elle prend en compte toutes les parties prenantes, donc de manière inclusive. Il y a une coordination assurée par l'Union africaine, l'AUIBA, il y a au niveau régional, les communautés économiques régionales qui harmonisent les cadres juridiques pour faciliter le commerce. Il y a au niveau national, les États membres et les acteurs non étatiques. Et sur le plan international, les organismes internationaux et les ONG pour le soutien technique. Cette activité sans risque et les risques qui peuvent être en plus sont l'engagement limité par les États membres, la sécurité de trafic, le commerce non maîtrisé, non souterrain et les contraintes reproductives, comme on a dit tantôt, parce que la durée de la gestation est longue. Pour avoir un animal, un anon ou fédon, il faut aller dans les 12-13 mois. Et l'hypothèse, si les États membres et les communautés communautaires intègrent les questions relatives, les questions relatives, non, la dernière, excusez-moi, je vous en prie, la version me dérange un peu, puis relative à la stratégie, lorsqu'ils prennent la stratégie des stratégies de bétail, pour la prise en compte. Pour ce qui est du suivi, évaluation et
Nous allons maintenant découvrir un acte politique fort. Pardon. La déclaration d'Abidjan portée par l'Union africaine qui appelle à un moratoire panafricain sur le commerce de la peau d'âne. Elle marque une volonté de rupture, une ligne rouge pour la protection de nos ressources animales et de nos communautés. Cette déclaration sera présentée par le docteur Hubert Boussini, également de l'UA-IRA. Docteur Boussini, c'est à vous. Mesdames et messieurs, merci de l'applaudir.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur le maître de cérémonie. Bonsoir à tous encore une fois. Après la présentation de la stratégie ce matin, j'ai présenté les grandes lignes de la stratégie et tout à l'heure vous avez suivi la présentation de cette même stratégie en détail avec les activités proposées. Et il a été prévu que cette conférence-là, la conférence d'Abidjan, va proposer une déclaration appelée la déclaration d'Abidjan sur la préservation des ânes en Afrique. C'est en anglais, donc je vais lire en anglais. It is the Abidjan Declaration on the common position and continental moratorium on donkey slaughter for skin trade in Africa. Early this morning, I highlighted the strategy and also the roadmap, the executive decision adopted by the head of state and government of the African Union member states requested for AUIMA to seek for a common position, at a continental common position, African ways of this document. So it is in English, I will read it as it is. I propose in the preamble, we, the minister in charge of livestock and animal production from Cote d'Ivoire, Uganda, Nigeria, Chad, Tanzania, Burkina Faso, and Cameroon, on behalf of all ministers in charge of livestock from the African Union member states, chief veterinary officers, regional economic communities, civil societies, representatives from international organizations, FAO, representatives from non-governmental organizations, the International Coalition for Walking Equity, during the second Pan-African Donkey Conference, convened by the Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources of African Union, held in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, from 27 June 2025, guided by the Executive Council decision on the African Union, that was adopted in February 2024 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, which directed the Commission to institute and coordinate an African common position and moratorium on the slaughter of donkeys for their skin and to develop the donkey strategy. Further guided by the communication dated on 2nd September 2024 of the ICTRC from the Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment to African Union member states, regional economic communities and animal welfare organizations of the executive decision to ban the slaughter of donkeys for their skin and urging them to support and prioritize its implementation. Further guided by the commitments in the Constitutive Act of the African Union, particularly Article 3 and 4 on the objective of the Union, including the promotion of sustainable development at the economic, social, and cultural level, as well as the protection of the environment and protection of human and people rights and the promotion of social justice to ensure balanced economic development. Further guided by the decision of the 4th STC, which called upon African Union member states to increase their commitment to protect all animals, including wildlife and other species, to ensure that any use of natural resources, including terrestrial, ocean, sea, and marine resources, is ecologically sustainable and human, particularly the human and sustainable farming practices. Informed by the livestock development strategy, we seek to transform the livestock sector by energizing its underutilized potential and promoting inclusive growth, food security, and resilient livelihood through sustainable animal resource management. Recalling the Malabo Declaration in 2014 on accelerated agricultural growth and transformation, we stress the significance of enhancing conservation and sustainable use of our natural resources, including livestock, through coherent policies and governance and institutional arrangement at national and regional level. Noting the Kampala Cadet Declaration on building resilient and sustainable agri-food system in Africa, upholding the principle and commitment of the Animal Welfare Strategy for Africa, jointly endorsed by the African Union, FAO, WOA, and member states in 2017, which aim to coordinate cross-countries and cross-regional animal welfare improvement efforts and forging partnerships to address the production and productivity of animal owner and user. Cohesion of relevant frameworks, protocol and strategies adopted and being implemented by regional economic communities that align with donkey, livestock production, welfare, protection, and sustainable use, acknowledging the 2022 Dar es Salaam Declaration on Donkey, now and in the future, which underscored the vital contribution of donkey to rural livelihood, the threats of donkeys, skin trade, the inadequate investment in donkey production and productivity, low donkey reproductive rate, poor welfare standard, cross-border trafficking, and the absence of dedicated national policies to enhance reproduction and productivity. Determined to preserve the donkey, promote its welfare and sustainable utilization in Africa, hence safeguarding its population and protecting the vulnerable communities that rely on them. Hereby declare and adopt the following common position and moratorium. Pan-African Donkey Strategy. Having reviewed the Pan-African Strategy for the preservation of donkey species in Africa, whose development was led by AUIPA, we unanimously adopt and recommend for its passage to the African Union Specialized Technical Committee of the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Sustainable Environment, Union member states. Policy domestication and enforcement reiterate the word of the African Union head of state and affirm our support for an African-wide moratorium on the ban on the slaughter of donkey for the purpose of the donkey skin trade. Urge African Union member states to follow the example of over 10 African Union member states who have declared national ban to donkey skin trade and have gone ahead to domesticate AU head of state moratorium and to align their livestock and related policies, law, administrative regulation, and ministerial directive and institute sustained crackdown of illegal donkey skin trade. Urge AU member states not to issue new licenses for donkey slaughterhouses and encourage them to suspend and revoke operation of existing donkey slaughterhouses. Call upon African Union member states to embrace cross-border collaboration and to strengthen surveillance of land and maritime borders, targeting informal crossing used for donkey smuggling. Reporting accountability, resource mobilization, and partnership. We further urge AU-IBA to lead partners to develop a monitoring and reporting matrix detailing legal, institutional, and data to track and assess the implementation of the moratorium and the Pan-African donkey strategy. Request AU-IBA to suggest to member states a biennial reporting mechanism on the implementation of the Pan-African donkey strategy, including the moratorium. Encourage AU-IBA to prepare a report every 2 years to be presented to the Specialized Technical Committee of Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment, and the AU Assembly for review and further guidance. Request African Union Commission, regional economic communities, and member states to mobilize financial and technical resources and in collaboration with development partners, namely FAO, WOA, the International Coalition for Walking Equity, and other animal welfare organizations toward the implementation of the Pan-African strategy, including the establishment of Africa Donkey Welfare and Preservation Program at AU-IBA. Adopted in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire on 27 June 2025. So this is the proposed declaration for guidance which will be adopted by the ministers and all CBOs participating to this conference. Okay.
Merci au Dr Hubert Poussini pour cette présentation claire et engagée. La déclaration d'Abidjan est désormais entre nos mains. Elle marque une volonté politique affirmée, celle de faire un front commun face au commerce destructeur de la peau d'âne. Et comme l'a rappelé le docteur, c'est désormais aux États membres de l'Union africaine de prendre le relais, d'enraciner cette stratégie dans leur politique nationale. Ce message est clairement posé et c'est à nous maintenant en tant qu'acteurs, témoins, relais, de lui donner un écho et de faire circuler, de le faire entendre. Et je vous invite encore à applaudir cette landmark. C'est bien timide comme applaudissement d'être là toute la journée pour entendre cette déclaration. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous propose des applaudissements plus nourris. Alors, la suite du programme. Il nous est proposé une session plénière à ce stade des choses. C'est bon, là? Très bien. Donc ce sera le moment, encore une fois, de prendre vos recommandations, vos ajouts et vos observations. Voilà, on va compiler à destination du secrétariat. Donc ce ne sera pas des réponses qui vont être données ici, mais on va récupérer vos questions. Donc merci de les noter et elles vont être à destination.
Il y a des gens qui vont poser des questions.
On va passer récupérer les questions.
Non, ça va. Betty. Serge. Faut lui dire de revenir à la caméra. André boucher quand je parle.
Mesdames et messieurs,
ok, je m'excuse. C'est juste pour faire une proposition, si vous me permettez. Je pense que ce qui a été présenté, c'est quelque chose de super, mais je pense qu'on doit aussi réfléchir à faire une année des arbres. Il faut tellement se faire que quand on parle des années des camélies, des dromadaires, des ceci, on déclare une année des arbres et on va choisir un jour pendant les 12 mois de l'année pour au moins sensibiliser les gens afin qu'ils prennent soin de leurs arbres et que les Africains puissent en profiter davantage. C'est juste une proposition, si c'est bon, il faut la prendre dans le document. Donc, je donne au professeur qui a trop demandé, je lui passe la parole. Vous demandez.
Est-ce qu'on a bien un document qui circule pour recueillir toutes ces propositions?
Je peux. Bien, merci. Je m'excuse d'insister un peu.
Merci.
Pour évoquer un point. Je n'étais pas à Dar es Salaam, mais je suis là à Abidjan. Et dans le travail que nous avons fait avec l'Union africaine sur la stratégie du bien-être animal, on voit qu'il y a une progression spécifique par rapport aux arbres, vu l'importance économique, sociale des arbres. J'ai regardé tous les documents et je me suis rendu compte qu'il y avait une omission, qu'il y avait un aspect qui n'est pas du tout abordé. Je voudrais savoir, est-ce que c'est peut-être des raisons diplomatiques, c'est peut-être un overlooking, comme on peut dire en français, en anglais. Ça nous a échappé de tous. Mais il me semble que nous devons innover pour faire en sorte que ce que nous faisons du côté de l'Afrique soit aussi compris par nos partenaires. On a parlé du triangle Europe, Afrique, Chine. Je n'ai vu nulle part un appel, un plaidoyer vis-à-vis des autorités de la Chine, qui, à ma connaissance, sont des autorités très sensées, ont une politique de coopération bilatérale et multilatérale avec l'Afrique, ont des liens particuliers avec l'Union africaine. Et je pense qu'on peut se donner le droit, en tant qu'Africain, en tant qu'institution africaine, de lancer un appel à la République de Chine pour qu'elle tienne compte de nos besoins, de nos craintes dans sa politique, dans ses relations. Et je pense que ce serait diplomatique d'insérer dans cette déclaration une recommandation pour que le chef d'État, dans le cadre de la coopération bilatérale ou dans le cadre de leur coopération multilatérale à travers l'Union africaine, fasse un plaidoyer auprès des autorités de la République populaire de Chine
que ce ne sont pas des questions, ce sont des contributions. Et nous en sommes reconnaissants. Nous allons vous approcher. Par exemple, pour la proposition, c'est vrai qu'il y a chaque année la journée internationale de l'art. Je pense que c'est le 8 mai. Pas 8 mars pour les femmes. Hein. C'est 8 mai, c'est pas 8 mars pour les femmes. Non, j'insiste pour que les femmes ne comprennent pas que c'est. Qu'elles ne fassent pas la même confusion que c'est 8 mars, la journée internationale de la femme. Journée mondiale de l'art. Mais il n'y a pas d'année internationale de l'art. Donc je pense que nous allons l'inclure dans la déclaration d'Abidjan. Et la contribution également du professeur Chekli pour appeler à cette collaboration avec les autres continents. C'est vrai que demain, il y a une session spécifique sur le partenariat, la collaboration et le partenariat. Parce que depuis cette initiative africaine a commencé depuis la première conférence à Dar es Salaam en 2022. Beaucoup de pays, que ce soit l'Inde ou le Brésil et d'autres pays, donc l'Asie et l'Amérique latine, nous ont approchés pour connaître également notre exemple. Et il y a un de nos collègues du Pakistan qui va intervenir demain. Parce que c'est devenu, et le Brésil a envoyé un message spécifique pour comprendre un peu le mécanisme mis en place par l'Union africaine pour adresser, faire face à ce défi de l'abattage de l'abattage en masse des armes pour l'exportation de leur peau. Prof, nous allons vous approcher également pour que vous nous aidez à enrichir et à prendre en compte cette dimension de collaboration et de partenariat avec l'autre partie du monde, je dirais. Merci.
Et c'est donc sur ces déclarations fortes que s'achève notre première journée de conférence. Merci à vous toutes et tous, intervenants, modérateurs, partenaires, délégations, journalistes, équipes techniques pour votre présence, votre engagement et la richesse des échanges. Cette journée marque un tournant, mais elle n'est qu'une étape. Le travail va continuer donc demain avec de nouveaux modèles, des regards croisés et un focus sur les actions à venir. Je vous donne donc rendez-vous à 9h précises. Enfin, nous avons le plaisir de vous informer qu'un dîner gracieusement offert par l'État de Côte d'Ivoire, ici même, à partir de 20h, tous les participants y sont cordialement conviés. Au nom de toute l'organisation, je vous souhaite une excellente soirée. This brings our first day of the conference to a close. Thank you to each and every one of you, speakers, moderators, partners, delegations, media and technical teams for your presence, your commitment and the richness of today's discussions. Today marks a milestone, but it's just the beginning of our work to resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp with fresh panels, cross-cutting insights and focus on the next steps. And finally, we are pleased to inform you that the dinner is graciously offered by the government of Côte d'Ivoire right here at the venue starting at 8 p.m. All the participants are warmly invited. On behalf of the entire organization team, I wish you all a very pleasant evening.
Je vais demander encore qu'on applaudisse pour notre modérateur. Il a fait un très bon travail professionnel.